I want to meditate on the mystery of passing away, precisely because a very dear person um, passed away, and um, and for people who don't have any hope beyond the grave, who don't live according to a life that is infused by a love that overcomes sin and death, it is hard to let go. Um, the act of letting go is perhaps one of the most difficult doors to pass through for anyone who doesn't walk by faith, and it's uh, it's a very dull and gloomy world um, for that person. Granted, the nature of death is not natural in and of itself, according to what the Christian faith professes, because we as human beings were made to be forever, and the moment we disassociated ourselves from the one who is life itself, we've cut ourselves off from the life source, um, and 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 this perspective, this Christian way of looking at the world, uh, wherein the world has been subsumed into the glory of God once again, and then through His Son Jesus Christ, who came into the world uh, to be able to touch that area of our hearts that was completely darkened by our turning away from Him who is the life, from Him who is goodness, truth, and beauty, and 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 true love, that is set apart from all that is false and ugly in the world and evil. Um, he came in and entered into that darkness and overcame it, according to who he is as a person, not just fully human, but fully divine as a son, as the only begotten Son of God. And so this this handing over of oneself into the hands of the one who is and who was and who is to come again in the end of time is an act of faith that one can enact, um, according to God's grace. And if you ask God uh, for the gift of faith, He can give you that gift. Um, and and so just going back to the mystery of what appears to be gone, the person who died, one must see with the eyes of faith the reality as such, and what is it that's there, what is the reality. um, it's very dim. It seems lifeless, and um, the breath of life removed from the flesh, results in a very pale substance. And the person, the person who animates um, that composite of of the soul and body, um, that person passes through a threshold that we all are called to pass through at some point, and that's perhaps one of the um, greatest acts that we would ever enact. I I say I say it's an act because one doesn't passively pass away. one um, one has to pass through it um, themselves. It's not something that happens to you um, solely, but it's something that um, if we take responsibility, we've all um, we've all um, participated in some way, shape, or form in this act that leads to death, and that's called sin. Separating ourselves from God. That's the nature of death, and that's what sin is. Sin separates you from God, and thanks be to God, um, death has been conquered in and through His Son, and we live by faith in Jesus, who has overcome sin and death in and through His very self. Um, Now, for those who are suffering the effects of the loss of a loved one, so yeah, those who are suffering the effects of the loss of a loved one, um, if there's any words of encouragement that I have, it's this: um, that the reality as such is that the person that you love is hopefully, um, according to God's grace, um, in a state of being that's in relation to God. And that's what prayer is all about. Prayer is uniting our minds and our hearts, lifting them up to the one who is and who was and is to come. And and so for someone who's lived out uh, a life according to the Spirit and has turned to God day in and day out, asking for mercy where there was misery in the person's life, and asking for forgiveness where they might have transgressed. Um, the hope is that that person did not stop there, and that the person turned to God, and that was their final act. here on earth. Now, for those who've passed away, um, and um, and has left people behind here on earth, um, and the people that was left behind um, were left with some type of worry because this person may not have lived the the life of grace, that is God's divine presence in the person's soul. I would commend those who are here, and are left behind. Um, I would commend you to lift up your heart and your mind, um, to the Lord, and and to put away all distractions. Ask God for the grace to pray and to and to intercede for them and to offer up a prayer for them who have passed away, um, namely that perpetual light may shine upon them, the light of God's face, and that they may be transformed from glory to glory. That's the hope that we are, um, um, at our core children of God, and that we are conformed to the image and likeness of His Son, um, His Son who is the visible image of the invisible God, um, the same God of Israel who came down and sat in the ark and was covered by the cloud of glory, because we weren't ready to see Him face to face, and so in that hiddenness he covered Himself, um, and revealed Himself in and through His Son Jesus. Um, that same God um, decided to take on flesh, and thanks be to God for a woman like Mary, who was uh, a woman of faith, who made of herself a complete offering to God, that it may be done unto her according to His word. And His word was this: Jesus, God saves. The literal meaning of Jesus: God saves. And so when you place your trust in Jesus, you're placing your trust in God who saves. And from what? Save you from what? Save us from what? Um, the enemy, which is the last enemy to be conquered, death. Um, like I said, going back to the beginning, we were made to be forever, to live forever, um, in love, through love, with love, for the sake of love, and so entrusting your loved one to God, um, and allowing yourself to be conformed by the reality as such is probably the biggest challenge. Because it calls you to live the real, to be present, to give of yourself, hand yourself over to the reality, and not hide from it, not go to drinks, not trying to numb your feelings, but getting into the reality and living in and through that heavenward, moving forward in light of a new mind and a new heart, and not turning back, because in the end of the day we're all passing through that threshold. And daily we can practice that by denying ourselves of things that are not truly in accord with love. And and those little acts of self-denial um, are are acts of letting go of certain things that are not good, and and there's a real death there. But in that turning to God, there's also life, and that's the hope that we have in Jesus Christ. And so, trust and have faith, and never forget that love is the only way, because only love can conquer death, and God is love. Amen.